Home Movie, 2008, the most disturbing found footage movie of all time?
Hi, and welcome to the Jack and Emily Show. I'm Jack.
I'm Emily.
Let's have some fun.
Playing dead?
Dear blessed Lord, thank you for the gifts that you have provided for us.
So, Home Movie was a found footage horror flick released in 2008. It was written and directed by a guy named Christopher Denham, who only did one other movie. It's called Preservation. I never got around to watching it because reviews were really weak on it. But, yeah, this movie stars Adrian Pasdar, who is best known for Near Dark, the classic vampire flick with Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen that Catherine Bigelow directed, and the TV show Heroes, which I was never a fan of. And it also stars Cady McClain, who has done a ton of soap opera stuff. So if you watch soap operas, you've probably seen her in something. But yeah, they play parents of two very disturbed children. And you may be saying to yourself, eye roll, creepy kid movie, bleh. I'm the same way. Like, I don't like creepy kid movies. Like movies like The Children or Hide and Seek, like The Good Son. They just don't work for me. And a big part of the reason they don't work for me is I feel like if a kid's coming for me, like wants to hurt me, I can stop it like very easily. It's like being attacked by a elf. Like just stop. Like just grab the little bastard by the head. Yeah, yeah, just stop. And then put the knife down. Stop. Don't make me hurt you. Just stop. But this movie is actually really fascinating, and a big part of the reason it's so fascinating is because this is a movie that really closely examines the idea of what it is to raise two disturbed children. They've got these two kids who I believe they got to be twins, right? Because they're celebrating their birthday together. They were born on Halloween. So, yeah, so it's this fairly affluent, you'd probably say upper middle class family, white collar family, who've moved out into the country. And they don't really specifically say it, but it's very strongly implied that something happened that caused them to move, that there was an incident, that something wasn't going well. And as the movie goes on, you can pretty much surmise that it has something to do with these two kids. Their two kids are named Jack and Emily, and these are just creepy little bastards. And this movie, it's all done in through a camcorder, and I don't remember if they say the year it's supposed to be taking place, but it's a crappy old camcorder, and they're filming everything, and they keep it's split up in holidays, so it's almost like chapters. You know, you have their birthday, which is on Halloween. You have Christmas, New Year's Eve, Valentine's Day, Easter, and each each holiday gets worse. You know, these kids are becoming more brazen. They're becoming more evil, and it's the parents trying to come through the course of this period of time, which would be October, January, February, like 6 months, over this period of time, trying to come to the realization, come to terms with the facts that their children are beyond being helped. And that's sort of what this movie's about. It's the father, played by Adrian Pasdar, is a Lutheran pastor. He's a priest. And the mother is a psychiatrist. And that's sort of what this movie is about the failure of both faith and reason. And the mother actually has a line later in the movie where she says, there are no good kids, there are no bad kids, there are only treatments and diagnoses. And that's sort of what this movie is about. It's about refuting that. It's about saying, no, some people are just born broken. They're born not functional. And that's the thing, is that if you look into murderers' past, you know, like some of the really bad ones, like Paddock or Bundy or Gacy or Gein or just these people, they they do not always. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's very easy. Like, oh yeah, that fucked you up. Like that's why you're messed up. Like right there, pretty easy. But then other times it's like their life was perfectly normal. You know, the only thing that's wrong in this picture is you. Like, and that's what this movie's about. The guy who made it, Denham, who again, he's not a very prolific filmmaker, but he's a very successful character actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in Shutter Island with DiCaprio for Martin Scorsese. He's on that show Billions now with Paul Giamatti. I don't watch it, but I know people that do. So he this is his first feature, and like I said, it's one of only two. But he said that this movie is about sometimes you can do everything right and everything still turns out wrong. Now I don't entirely agree with that because I don't think these parents do everything right. Now these I'm gonna give a warning for spoilers because I feel like not enough people have seen this movie. And I think more people should watch this movie, and it's actually free on YouTube right now. Like the whole movie is just free on YouTube. So unless someone copyright claims it, it'll still be there. But you can also get it on Amazon, and I'm sure it's much better quality on Amazon because the YouTube rip is crap. But it's good enough if you just want to watch it. So the father is approaching this from a faith perspective, and the mother is approaching this from a clinician's perspective, essentially. But neither of them is approaching it to me like watching it from a parent's perspective. And the thing is that as a parent, you're not only responsible for raising your child, you're responsible for taking for your child. You're responsible for your child. In the same way that if your kid breaks the neighbor's window, you're paying for it. If the kid doesn't have any money, you're paying for it. And that's the thing that they're not doing. And another thing is that this was 2008, so this was before social media destroyed society. But this movie does sort of seem to predict what I've heard called Instagram mommies, and I'm sure men do it too. So that's kind of an unfair term, but I've only heard it referred to as Instagram mommies, and it's those people who use their kids like props, who say, "Look at me, I'm a perfect parent. Stand here, look, smile, just look, we're having so much fun. Have fun." Just they're not interested in their kid. They're interested in the idea of framing a perfect family. They're like, be perfect. So that's a big part of what they're doing because they keep documenting all these things and they're doing these kind of lavish things like the birthday party on Halloween. They did play flashlight tag even though the kids aren't into it. They don't care. They're playing baseball even though again the kids aren't into it. They don't care. The parents want to do these things. The kids aren't interested in them. So it does feel like they're not trying to understand their kids, and it also they are in deep the parents are in deep denial about how disturbed their kids are, like right from the beginning of the movie. So I do think that the parents are making mistakes, but to some extent you can understand it because they don't understand their children, so they're just trying to. Like I said, it comes down to denial to me. This is a movie about two people who are in deep denial, and I think that's very understandable. And I think that's the reason this movie got to me so much when I first saw it. Like I said, I saw this thing when it first came out, and it hit me like a brick, man. There's no gore to speak of. Like, there's a little tiny bit of gore, but there's almost no on-screen violence whatsoever. It's just the ideas in this movie are so disturbing and so unpleasant, and mental illness is very frightening because how does a normal person cope with that, especially in a loved one? Like, what do you do? If you're raising two deeply disturbed children, as these people are, how do you handle that? Like, what do you just say, okay, later, and just throw them in a hospital, or like, it's an impossible situation. And it would be even more difficult just to accept them. Yes, my children are dangerous, and that's what this whole movie is kind of about, is them accepting, not realizing, but accepting that their kids are legitimately dangerous. And I think that's a very scary concept of just a family member, whether it's a parent or even just a close friend or just whoever, just having to accept that yes, this person is a danger. This person could harm someone else. This person could harm me. And like I said, I remember the first time I saw this, just at the end of it, I actually called the girl I was dating. It's just like, man, I'm kind of depressed. Can we just talk? Because, like I said, this movie just hit me hard. And when you talk about the most disturbing found footage movies, usually what comes up are things like Megan is Missing, which I did a review of, or August Underground's Mortem, or the Poughkeepsie tapes, or even something that's not really full found footage but has elements of it, like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, or a Serbian Film, or Cannibal Holocaust. But yeah, this movie really got to me, and I think that it's interesting that it's been memory hold so long. No one ever talks about this. It never gets mentioned, and I really think it should, because it is really unsettling, especially for animal lovers. So yeah, this is basically just a series of terrible holidays with these two children, and the kids are showing some of the early warning signs of becoming serial killers, especially animal cruelty. Like I said, if you're an animal lover, buckle in because it might be a little rough. But yeah, it is kind of funny that when you watch a horror movie and you see the main characters have pets, it's like, oh, they don't die. Like I like with the Child's Play remake with Chucky, where they have the pet cat, and like literally I remember seeing that in the theater and being like, oh, that cat's dead. The first scene the cat's in, it's like, oh yeah, that cat's dead. That cat's not gonna make it to the end of this movie. And these people have a lot of pets. So yeah, this is an extremely well acted movie. Adrian Pasdar and Cady McClain are both fantastic, and it's actually kind of sad that neither of these actors have had particularly successful careers. I mean, Pasdar has worked, I guess, more or less consistently as a character actor, but he's certainly never become like a name, famous. And McClain, like I said, she's mostly only done soap operas. So watching how good they are in this, you are a little sad that these two didn't have better careers. The two kids are just creepy as hell. But honestly, when you have a little kid that just stares at you blank faced, it just walks up, you just that's creepy all by itself. The kid, so essentially all these two kids had to do was just be in frame, but they are appropriately eerie, and there's not really a lot of, there's almost no other characters in the movie. This is a very self-contained movie, which works for it. It's kind of like the Shining, another movie about not being able to trust a family member, is you don't really want to leave this space because the space feels like a cage. It feels like you're trapped in this situation with these characters, and even though they have the woods surrounding them, the woods, aren't a sanctuary. The kids own the woods. The kids play in the woods all the time. The parents don't really know their way around the woods. The kids also have this creepy ass little playhouse that says no parents allowed. And pro tip to parents: if your kid has a space that they specifically tell you you're not allowed in, go there immediately. Like right then, not like Oh, you don't want me to see this? What's in it then? Like, there's a reason they don't want you to see it. So yeah, very effective movie, and I'm going to just kind of describe the plot a little bit now. So spoilers from here on out, but highly recommend it. It doesn't feel too dated. It's an older movie. It's 12 years old, but it doesn't feel too dated. It's really a good movie. This is one of the forgotten horror flicks. This is something that people should really rediscover. So the movie, like I said, it starts on each holiday, and there's a there's a lot of foreshadowing at the beginning of the movie. The mom, when they're playing flashlight tag on Halloween, right at the beginning of the movie, keep in mind these kids' birthday was on Halloween. The mom, as the kids run by her, she just kind of says, "Did you just bite me?" And that's a running thing, is that these kids, for whatever reason, are obsessed with cannibalism, and they're also obsessed with this creepy ass stuffed dragon toy that they have. And at one point, the father tells them this bedtime story about a child-eating dragon, and he says, "Oh, it's about stranger danger. It's about teaching them about stranger danger. But the whole story is about a dragon that puts on a paper sack to hide amongst kids and then eats them." And the mom goes like, "This is the most wildly inappropriate bedtime story in history." And there's a little bit of a game about whether or not the dad's abusive, like because he has a history of abuse and he's a borderline alcoholic. And the mom does suspect him, especially earlier on, that he may have abused the children. Now, did the dad abuse the children? I tend to think no, because he doesn't seem, no matter how bad things he get, he never actually becomes violent towards the kids. So I tend to think that it's not so much that he was abusive, but that he probably had some sort of psychological issue that he passed down to them genetically. Because that is one of I looked it up before I did this. That is one of the warning signs of psychopathy in children. Antisocial personality disorder is the current correct diagnosis for this. But that is one of the big warning signs, is a history of psychological imbalances in your family. Another one is animal cruelty. And like I said, these kids are dropping pets left and right. They kill the fish. They crucify a cat. They decapitate a dog. They crush a frog. Like, it's just. And at first, the parents are weirdly. And again, it comes down to denial. I really do think it's not that unacceptable, because at first it's mostly smaller animals, and the parents do see it and they're disgusted by it, but they're just kind of like hand waving it away. And I can see that as being just, like I said, deep denial. Like, every kid burned an ant with a magnifying glass at some point in his life. Every kid maybe kicked a dog just to see what would happen. Like, you see that with very young children where they'll like pull a cat's tail just to see what will happen. So they're kind of trying very hard to pretend that this isn't happening. And yeah, as it gets worse, they can obviously no longer do it. The crucified cat is kind of the breaking point. But so the father, he turns to his faith, and he actually tries to exorcise them at one point. And the mother begins looking at them as patients, and just tries to medicate them. And it seems to work, and they actually get expelled from school for cornering a kid and biting the hell out of him. And they had previously bitten each other. They were covered in bite marks. And when they're asked who did the biting, they say the man in the closet. And when you see what's in the closet, all you see is the stuffed dragon. So I do think that these children are legitimately, they're probably hallucinating, and their parents aren't noticing it. And there are certainly instances of this. The Slender Man attack. that notorious incident where those two like 12, 13-year-old girls cornered a friend of theirs and tried to stab her to death at a birthday party. Like one of the girls was hallucinating badly, and her mother just didn't know it, didn't notice it. And that's the thing, is that with kids, they make stuff up and they fantasize, so you don't necessarily realize that they actually believe this. And that was actually one of that girl's defenses, is that the Slender Man was like Santa Claus to her. She just assumed he was real. But yeah, so I tend to think that these kids were hallucinating. And yeah, it is very unlikely to have two children that are both have a relatively rare psychological diagnosis. But it's also possible that one of them was influencing the other. Because you spend so little time with the kids, it's hard to say which of them is the antagonist or which of them is worse. But I don't know. I kind of think the daughter was actually the worst of the two of them, because you see her doing things. You don't necessarily see the son doing things. So, whatever the cause is, Jack and Emily are, they claim, they seem to think that the dragon's alive. But they also seem to have gotten the idea that the camera is alive somehow. And because their parents are so obsessed with videotaping everything, and they talk into the camera all the time, it seems like Jack and Emily, their children, have begun to think of the camera as a person. They talk to it as if it's a person, not as if they're just talking to themselves. So like I said, I do think these kids were very psychologically imbalanced, and beyond even the obvious of, yeah, they clearly have antisocial personality disorder. They clearly don't care about others. They have this bizarre fascination with cannibalism. They like hurting things. They like asserting their power. They like manipulating. So I think that they were hallucinating. I think that they may have thought. Like I said, I really think that they thought the dragon was alive. And you like, if you pay attention to the story the dad tells about the child-eating dragon, at the end of the movie, they're both wearing paper sacks over their heads, like the child-eating dragon in the story was. So I think that they thought they were being influenced by the child-eating dragon. Now, there is a scene in this movie where it starts to seem like there may be a supernatural element, but that's only one scene, and I tend to think that was just the kids fucking with the dad, because they knew that they know that he's a man of faith, and they know they can kind of manipulate him based on that. There's another scene where he's trying to say grace, he's trying to say a blessing before dinner, and every time he starts, they disrupt him. So I think that they're just kind of using his faith against him, because I mean, there's nothing you can't explain away in that one scene leading up to the exorcism where it starts to seem like, well, is there something supernatural here that isn't just these two kids messing with their dad? Because, like I said, he drinks too much and he's in deep denial. So I tend to think that there's no supernatural element to this movie. But yeah, the mom tries medicating them, which they turn on her as well. So this all kind of comes to a head on Easter. The whole movie culminates on Easter. And the child they attacked earlier, they've actually befriended, and they've started acting normal. They talk, they interact. Like the whole first chunk of this movie, these kids barely say a word. They just tend to stare blankly at their parents. So after the exorcism, after being medicated, they seem like normal kids. They're sitting, they're playing. They've made friends with this little boy they attacked earlier. They've managed to get back into school. So it seems like everything's all fine. But it's not. They actually try again, and this time much more intensely, to eat this other kid. They tie him, they drag him off to their playhouse, and like I said, if your kid has a space that they don't want you to see, look at it immediately. This whole thing of children deserve their privacy, nah. Now, you should have every password your kid has. You should have their Facebook, their Instagram, their Twitter, their TikTok, everything. If they have a room if they have a drawer, look in it. Kids don't need any privacy. They're too young. They shouldn't have it. They just shouldn't. So, I'm sorry, but it's just, you can't do that. They're your children, not your friends. They don't deserve privacy. Anyway, so the dad finally goes into the clubhouse at the end of the movie, and they've tied up, and he sees all this shit. Like, they've drawn all these pictures of, right behind me, good timing, of, eating children, of monsters, of mutilated animals, and they have straight up, like I said, they decapitated the family dog and put its head on a pike like they're fucking Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. They've got all these mutilated animals laying around their clubhouse, and they got the kid that they kidnapped tied up in a plastic bag. And at the beginning of the movie, the dad says, "Dead things go in trash bags," because the kids have a weird tendency of playing with dead things. So you can certainly extrapolate from that. They considered this kid to already be dead. They were going to kill him and eat him. they're sitting there like with food, like with a fork and spoon, like we are going to eat. So so they and that scene is jarring, man. That scene is jarring. Like seeing a child tied up like that, and you see one eye through like a tear in the bag, just terrified. It's a, like I said, this movie it shocks you. It shocks you very legitimately in places. So they untie him, and apparently there was some sort of legal snafu because it's Easter where they couldn't really get anything done legally. And you may be saying to yourself, "That's bullshit." No, no, no. With children, the law tends to be a lot more lax, for lack of a better word. Because again, I remember a real life incident in the news where this guy who was like 14, 15, he had done, I don't remember what he did, but he did something that upset his mom to the point where she tried to have him committed. And they basically said, yeah, we'll look into your situation. And whatever he done, like I said, I don't remember, but it was big. But they said, yeah, we'll look into it and we may commit him at a later date. And the mom is like, no, I want you to take him out of my house. He is dangerous. And they just wouldn't do it. And like within 2 or 3 days of this, he stabbed a neighbor kid to death, like a 10-year-old. He just went over to that kid's house and stabbed him to death. So the fact that the cops don't immediately take these two minors, I think that that's very plausible. I think that the cops would say, okay, they're small, they're your responsibility. Just don't let them out of the house, and we'll consult with DFACS, we'll consult with Family Services, we'll consult with the YDC, and we'll see what the next step should be. Especially because it's on a holiday, and this is seemingly a small town. So I tend to think that that's plausible. What is less plausible, though, so the kids are still in the parents' house, and there's this really, really sad scene where the parents are talking to the camera after this last incident, where they say that our kids they're dangerous. We can't have them in the house anymore. This is likely to be the last night they spend in their house, and they break down in tears. And like I said, it's a very sad moment because no matter how messed up your kids are, I think you would still tend to want to care for them yourself. I don't think very many parents would say, just push them out the door, take them, they're fucked up, I don't want them anymore. So it's a very sad moment. And then the kids get control of the camera after the parents go to bed that night. And I'm not sure why the parents didn't just lock but these kids are kind of resourceful, so maybe they did. It doesn't show it. But the kids aren't restrained enough to stop them from getting out, and they set it up. Like they set their parents up. They set up traps. It's like Home Alone. Like they set up nails outside so that if you run outside, your nails are gonna go on your foot. They break the light so the parents won't be able to see. And this last bit, I didn't find. This is the one thing in the movie that I really find implausible is that they drug their parents dinner for the night. And the reason I say that is because as upset as these two people are, I don't think they would have eaten dinner. I don't think they would have cooked dinner. And it seems like they just did it. I mean, I don't see how they could have done it at the beginning of the day and the effects wouldn't have been felt until the end of the day. So it had to have been dinner. It couldn't have been breakfast. So yeah, I don't think the parents would have fixed dinner, let alone eaten dinner, as upset as they were. So that one thing is kind of, I don't buy it. But that was kind of the only thing in the movie that really struck me as impossible. So yeah, they set their parents up, and the parents are ultimately captured by their children. And the mom almost gets away. She tries to flag down an ice cream truck that's driving by for help. I think that was another bit of symbolism where it's kind of like she can't reach out to the children's innocence to save herself because they're not anymore. In the same way she can't reach out to this the ice cream truck, which is for kids, because it just passes her by. It doesn't even see her. So yeah, the movie ends cold with the parents both tied up and the kids preparing to eat them alive. Apparently, it's not shown in the movie, but the dad says that he caught them eating raw meat at one point. So I think that they are going to eat their parents alive. Now, would they necessarily kill them doing this? Because they're kids and they wouldn't necessarily eat all like I don't know. It doesn't show. And I kind of would have liked a little epilogue on this thing, like maybe a news story or something, just to give a little bit more of a closure to it, because I do find it a little bit tiresome the way every found footage movie has to end with that cold stop. Just like done. Like ever since the Blair Witch Project, that's how every found footage movie has to end. Like Paranormal Activity, body flies at the camera, done. Cloverfield, shit falls down on him, done. Wreck, girl drug off into the darkness, done. Yeah, that's a cliche I don't really like, and I'm not actually a huge fan of found footage in general, but I do think this is a good one. I think this is one that's, like I said, it's definitely worth watching. It's worth reappraising. It's worth really giving a chance to it. I think a lot of horror fans, if you've seen it, I think you should encourage your friends to see it. It's an effective movie. It's not boring, which is impressive given how small the scale of the story is. So yeah, that's me. That's my talk about home movie. And once again, as always, I forgot to do this. I should do this at the beginning, but Maniac Movies. Uh, like, subscribe, share, updates Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm done.